No.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Hi, Megan.
Hi. I am in my car. We're going to be in my car shortly, so I'm going to just stay off video, but here I am.
All right, welcome. So it is 9:30 and it looks like we do have a quorum, so I will read the intro and then everyone can introduce themselves and note they're participating remotely and we can get started. So to begin with, on March 29th, 2023, Governor Healy signed into law a supplemental budget bill, which, among other things, further extends temporary provisions pertaining to the open meeting law to March 31st, 2025. Any or all members of a public body may continue participating in meetings remotely. The open meetings law's requirement that a quorum of the body and the chair be physically present in the meeting location remains suspended. This meeting is being recorded. All votes must be taken with a roll call vote. We'll begin the open session by having each remote member introduce themselves. This is Michael Marcucci participating remotely. Brent
Nelson participating remotely.
Megan,
Megan Sullivan participating remotely.
Rob
Egler participating remotely.
Christine,
Christine Trueweiler participating remotely.
and Andrew.
Andrew Foster participating remotely.
And Frank is here as well, but Frank, as I understand, I don't think you're a member of the committee officially. You're just sort of our guide and Sherpa here. So you don't need to introduce yourself, and you need no introduction. So, all right. With that said, welcome everyone. And our first agenda item is approval of the minutes from February 27th and March. What's the date? March 4th, right? March 28th, excuse me, March 27th and February 27th and March 28th. Any comments on the February 27th minutes? All right, if there's no comments, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
There's a motion from Christine. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Brent. All right, we'll take a roll call vote. Christine?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. All right, that's February 27th. On the March 28th, the only correction I have is that on the header for the minutes, it says February 27th again. Should probably say March 28th. Does anyone else have any edits on the March 28th minutes? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
Motion for Brent. Is there a second? I second. All right, Christine,
Yes.
Brent,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So the minutes for March 28th, 2024 are approved. Terrific. Thanks, everyone. All right, the next item, and I'll turn this over to Frank just to introduce it, is to review the new non-building capital request form. Nothing like a new form to review. So Frank, why don't we take it away?
Yes,
I quite like it.
love bureaucracy and red tape around here. So this sort of follows up on a couple of conversations that we had last year during the fiscal 25 capital budgeting process. This is really an effort to standardize the expectations for all department heads about the different information that they should be providing to the committee when requesting funding for whether it be a piece of equipment or a non-building project. And it's really also for transparency purposes, so that members of the public can see what all these equipments or pieces of equipment or projects are, what their operating budget impact will be in the future, and really a breakdown of the cost. So obviously, if someone's buying a truck or I don't know, a piece of equipment for an ambulance, it's relatively cut and dry. But for instance, if someone's paving a project, or excuse me, paving a parking lot, you know, just asking for $200,000 to pave the parking lot isn't really sufficient. There's obviously going to be engineering or site plan work that needs to be done as well. So really breaking down that cost, and also including quotes for any work or equipment to be purchased as well. And all of this will be included in the meeting packets moving forward for the committee to review ahead of their meetings. They'll be posted online, and they'll be included in our GFOA budget document at the end of the year when we publish that. So this is the draft that we came up with for this year. The forms will only be given for fiscal 26 items. We weren't going to ask folks to fill it out for all 5 years of the capital plan. Obviously happy to tweak that moving forward, and happy to make any edits to the form moving forward as well if there's things that you think are missing or don't look quite right. The bottom right box is basically the criteria that we discussed last year, sort of the nice to, or what do we call them? Should do's, nice to do's, and need to do's. And again, the bottom line there requests that all the department heads include all the different quotes and information to back up the pricing and the amount of the request. So that's the form. It's pretty cut and dry. And again, just to set expectations for department heads and for reasonable transparency, we thought it was a good idea to start doing this.
Thank you, Frank. Comments, questions, discussions?
I think it's great. I would want to know though, I mean, the one line item that always strikes me as most in need of this is whenever this, you know, the town or the school asks for blanket IT in a very, very large number, is this form going to be sufficient to really explain, you know, where these big numbers come from many, many, many small things adding up? I mean, I guess they're going to attach it to the back, because that's the premise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so at least on the, and unfortunately, Michael LaFrancesca did text me this morning and let me know that he wouldn't be able to make it. But at least on the town side, we've talked to Owen already about the different items that he anticipates spending, sort of that blanket amount that typically the committee has recommended for funding. Typically it's around 30,000. I think this year we're requesting 50,000. So instead of just saying, you know, equipment or upgrades, there's specific projects I think that will account for most of that money that Owen will present on when it comes time for him to come before the committee.
Yeah.
And we'll also be doing the same on the IT operating side as well.
I like this. And I think what you're saying is, even though somebody has a project for, you know, maybe 3 years out, we're only going to ask them to fill out this form when it's 1 year out. Is that right?
Yes. If
Right,
that's
so-
acceptable to you all, then that's what our initial plan was, just for the sake of not having the departments that it's having to fill out, you know, things 5 years out, you know, 20 forms. By the time we get there, the prices might have changed. So that was our.
That's great. The other thing I wonder if we could put under the check all that apply is, could we put something about, you know, sustainability somehow? Does this help our municipal vulnerability plan? Does it fit with our TOM cap? Does it, help the town get to net zero? Something that just acknowledges that that's something we should all be thinking about with especially these big expenditures.
Yeah, I'm happy to, I can come up with a phrase or a few words, Megan, and I'm happy to send it over to you just to make sure that it hits the themes that you're thinking of. And then our department heads have already started filling these out, but I think it would be a relatively easy ask to go back and tweak some of them and check with the ones that apply.
I think, Megan, I think that's a really good point. The select board last night considered the net zero vehicle policy. And I anticipate they'll approve that at their next meeting. So we can add that on here to make sure that people have reviewed that. And if they are requesting a vehicle that's met that new policy.
Super, thank you.
And I should also add, I don't believe as of right now anyway, I don't think that we would fill this out for appropriations out of the municipal building stabilization fund. This would just for the non-building capital items.
All right. Anything else?
Yeah, I had a question, and that would be where the costs, let's say there's an approval of $50,000 for X type of equipment, and to the extent that you have say increases in costs with new quotes from vendors. Would that then, in terms of how the committee would approve or perhaps not approve an increase, would that just be a referral to this request? For example, this form along with additional information, that sort of thing. Would we want to make this request? I guess that would be the initial documentation of it, and then anything else would be a change to that, I suppose, or just an addendum.
So, Rob, are you asking if the quote is for if it's
50,000?
Yeah, and the quote is 47,500. Would the committee accept a request of 50,000 to account for potential increase?
Well, yeah, that's possible, but yeah. Or for example, if you allowed 50,000 and the quotes came in at a minimum of 54,000, just I guess just go back to refer to this specific request detail. It's an addendum to it, and we approve it on that basis.
Rob, I'm not sure what you're saying, because if they're giving us the quotes, and we set the 50,000, that's what's going to be appropriated at town meeting. If the quotes are over that, they're going to have to come back to capital or find another way to pay for that gap. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. I mean, so according to our procedure, again, it would have to go back to, it would have to be a modification. That would be, I guess, if it was over, and therefore, or could there be, I guess, some way of maybe reallocating funds for projects that came in, under quotation or under the approved estimates or projection.
I do think recently, and this will no longer be applicable soon, unfortunately, but I think last year we had a facilities vehicle that there was a $45,000 appropriation for in a prior year. And when it actually came time to buy the vehicle, it was closer to 60. And I think the committee approved a recommendation to the select board that ARPA funding be used to basically make up the difference. Now, as I mentioned, the ARPA funding won't be really a factor pretty soon. So, but I mean, there are other ways to pay for things. So I don't know if maybe that's what, so maybe, I don't know if the
Quotes.
have to
Sorry.
way to pay for it out of their operating budget, and the capital budget committee would have to recommend or approve that cost overrun. I think that's how it's been handled in the past, but I don't know if that's how we want to do it moving forward.
I mean, I like the form. I think it's pretty comprehensive. But as we all know, initial estimates and sometimes actual quotations from vendors do change. Unfortunately, a lot of times they increase. I'm not trying to make it more complicated than it has to be. I'm just asking.
If I'm not mistaken though, right, the way we do it now is if the quote comes back higher, then the organization has to, or the department has to come back to us, right? So we do get a hand in the review a second time.
Yeah, I mean, if we appropriate $50,000 for a vehicle at town meeting, they go to purchase the vehicle and it comes in at 60. There's no other available funding for that. They would have to come back the next year for additional funding. They wouldn't be able to expend that money until they had the full appropriation.
And this form is not going to change that
No.
aspect of it. So anything else on the form specifically? So it sounds like we're all good with the form, Frank, and if you want a formal approval of it, we can put it on an agenda for a future meeting, but I think there's no objection to the form. So the next item is update on the financial policies. You can handle that, Frank?
Yes, it's more just of an FYI. I'm not sure there's a more formal update right now, but the warrant committee is in the process of, or will be in the process, I think, of taking a look at the town's financial policies and updating them. One of the updates that concerns the capital budget committee basically sets a goal for the balanced capital stabilization fund to be an average. I think right now it's somewhere between 3 and 5 years of prior year appropriations. So last year we had actually done an analysis like this and basically figured out that, on an average year, we appropriate about $1 million. And so that would basically mean that the financial policy, if approved, it's still a ways to go, would basically set a target balance of the capital stabilization fund to be at least $1 million, give or take. So I think that the warrant committee plans to take that up at their meeting in September, and then from there, I think it'll be distributed to all the affected boards and committees, and then ultimately voted on by the warrant committee and voted on by the select board. But I just wanted to put that on everyone's radar as we move ahead for the fiscal 26 process and keep that sort of target in mind in the case that the policy was approved in the fall.
And Frank, would that be defined as a balance after town meeting appropriations or a target of an appropriation into the fund?
After town meeting appropriations.
Okay.
But I'm sorry, I may have just answered incorrectly. So appropriations out of the fund, but also considering any free cash or other appropriations into the fund as well.
Well, we can send a draft copy out for everybody to review. I think it's basically what we've been doing in practice. But Steve Callahan would like to formalize our procedures a little more.
Okay. Terrific. All right, next one, review of available and projected capital stabilization fund and municipal building capital stabilization fund balances.
So in the packet, I just sent around the estimated balances that we'll have available to appropriate for this upcoming year's capital budget process. Right now, we have available roughly $870,000 in the capital stabilization fund. Just for round figure sake, if we were to appropriate out $1 million, and then we have $451,000 in ARPA money that would likely offset some of the capital appropriations made in prior years. That would result
So
in.
Frank, I don't mean to interrupt, but just to clarify,
Yeah.
the 870 you're talking about, that's the amount in the fund net of appropriations and contributions after last year's town meeting, correct?
Correct.
That's what we expect to be certified when the finances are certified this fall.
Yes.
So we'll
And
be
then-
coming into this fiscal year with 870 in the fund, then subject to further
Mhm.
appropriation.
Correct. And that amount could grow if, I'm assuming the warrant committee will recommend some sort of appropriation of free cash into the fund, but I didn't want to just put a number in there, so I didn't.
Sure.
You can see in years past, last year was 700, the year before that it was 850. So assuming it's somewhere in that neighborhood, if we appropriate out $1 million, there's a decent chance we still end up with $1 million in the fund at the end of June 2026. Basically you would take that 321,000 and add, I don't know, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, whatever the warrant committee feels is to appropriate into from free cash. And then roughly the same process for the municipal building stabilization fund on the next page. The approved override for this year that is still subject to be approved by the select board is just under $1.2 million. We're left with $455,000 from last year's appropriation. And in the most recent draft of the 5-year building plan, the appropriations total just under $1.5 million. So that would leave us with about $200,000. But obviously that number is subject to change. The number highlighted in yellow under the total project appropriations column, that number is subject to change given the recommendations of the committee and town meeting approval, I guess.
Okay. Any questions, comments, discussion on the fund balances? All right. Hearing none, next preview of draft FY 2026 to FY 2030 capital plan.
So last night I had sent over an updated version of this document that includes the deep projects, excluding water and sewer. So these will be the projects that different department heads will be presenting on at their meetings with the committee over the course of the next, I guess, a month and a half. So obviously happy to follow up with any of them prior to those meetings if there's specific projects that are of particular interest. Obviously they'll be presenting more in depth on the fiscal 26 projects. If there's any questions about those or any of the projects in the out years, I'm happy to follow up with them just so they're, I guess, sort of more prepared. Talk about some of those outer year projects. And again, as a reminder, all of the projects in fiscal 26 will have those forms with all the additional information provided for your review prior to your meeting.
Frank, one thing that would be helpful to me on this form, to the extent it applies to any of them, if there are requests on here in years other than fiscal year 2030 that are new.
Mhm.
In other words, if there are any requests in FY 26 that were not in the FY 26 list last year, if you could sort of shade them in or highlight them or asterisk them, and the same thing with the other requests as well. So if there's something been added to FY 27 this year that was not in last year's budget, it would be helpful just to reflect those, because I think as an initial matter, those are probably the ones we want to focus our attention on the most, in addition to any of the things that are being added for FY 2030 that are new. So that would just be, but again, it may be that all of these are just carryovers from last year, which is great. But to the extent there are things that are new, that this particularly for this year that were not on FY 26 in last year's 5-year plan, I would appreciate that being reflected on this form.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
So if you have a chance to review this, I know I sent it late last night, I apologize. But if there are things individually that you'd like, a department head or me or someone to pay extra special attention to, I'm happy to, follow up on that. Feel free to give me a call, shoot me an email, whatever is easiest.
Well, Frank, I could, excuse me, I could tell you right now that, I mean, pursuant to what I said earlier, the 300,000 a year in perpetuity for IT school infrastructure, I think, you know, that's a third of the 1 million that we're hoping to have every year.
Mhm.
Probably, I would like to see a better drill down than I've seen in the past as to what that is. I'm not doubting that it's needed. I just want to know what it is.
Absolutely. Yep. I will follow up with Michael on that.
Frank, you may have mentioned this already, but the gap between the 2,331,000 and the 1 million, you know, on the more condensed projection for fiscal 26. Does that does the 2.33 million basically include all other types of funding other than appropriations, for example, Chapter 90 and so forth?
Yeah.
In other words, you're showing us the gross amount here.
Correct. So there, all the various funding sources that fund the capital budget would be included there, as opposed to in that roll forward analysis, it would be just those funded by the Capital Stabilization Fund. So whether it be a revolving fund or Chapter 90, you know, when we tack on the enterprise funds, those would all be included in that grand total, I guess.
Yep. Okay. That's what I thought. Okay.
Anything else? All right, discussion and update to 20-year municipal buildings capital plan and fiscal year 2026 municipal building capitalization stabilization fund projects.
So this one's also just a little bit of a heads up. We're in the process of the contract is mostly complete. We have a couple I's to dot and T's to cross, but we're in the process of kicking off the update to our 20-year facilities capital plan. So in this case, the vendor would come in, the contractor is going to come in, look at all of the buildings, recommend all of the changes, upgrades, improvements that need to be made, assign a dollar cost to all of those, and then basically build a 20-year capital plan. I believe this was last done in 2017. That will be kicking off hopefully within the next couple of weeks. The timeline for that to be completed is a little bit TBD. It may be sometime in the winter, maybe early spring. For the fiscal 26 appropriations out of the Municipal Building Stabilization Fund, we could see a little bit of a bridge year where we're just trying to recommend things that to the committee that are sort of normal routine course of business. It's just a little bit dependent on the timing of the completion of the project. I should mention also that I can't remember if this happened. No, this was after town meeting, so I don't believe that you have this update yet. But our facilities director, Amy Colleran, actually left the town for a new opportunity. We have a couple of folks in the facilities department that are handling it awesome in the meantime. Our new facilities project manager, who's taking the lead on completing a lot of his capital projects, started in January and has hit the ground running. But we still are without a facilities director, and obviously that knowledge of building the 5-year plan last year, you know, we lose that. So more to come on that. Again, it's just a little bit dependent on the completion of the study. But we do anticipate still making appropriations or recommending appropriations for fiscal 26.
Okay. So more to come on that ultimately. Any questions, comments, discussion? All right, finally, scheduling future meetings for review of individual department capital requests for FY 2026. I think that we're meant to be done with this by the end of October. Is that right, Frank?
Yes.
All right. And so I guess the first question is, how many meetings do we think we'll need? In other words, if we can combine people together, what's the total number we need to have between now and the end of October, leaving room for sort of one wrap up and discussion meeting where we can kind of vote on and recommend the total package to the warrant committee and the select board. I think it usually makes sense to have, one meeting devoted to public works, just given the number of requests that they have. There's a few police and fire. We could probably do police and fire together,
Mhm.
which would make 2 meetings. It sounds like we should have a meeting devoted to IT, which would be 3. And then maybe we can combine, Parks and Rec and facilities for 4 meetings. Anybody think that breakdown won't work?
I wonder, would everybody rather have more meetings, or could we find a longer meeting? Just a thought.
Like one.
You mean
like,
more meetings, like 1 meeting per department?
Instead of having 4 meetings, could we see all those departments in 1 meeting that's 3 hours long? Or would people rather do an hour a week for 4 weeks?
Well, I would just, for me personally, it's probably going to be easier for me to find an hour than 3 hours. I don't have that many 3-hour blocks available during the day. So I don't know. What other people think about that? If we just had 1 mega meeting and went through them all.
I can only do that at night. I'm in the same situation. So plus it's hard for me to get my head around and preview the documents if it's a massive stack. That's just me personally. But if it was done at night, in principle, I could do it.
Yeah.
The 1 hour are fine. I just wanted to ask if maybe we can find a time that works on a weekly basis. I know, Frank, you go to a lot of effort to get us the time that works.
Yeah, it would be nice if we could schedule it at a consistent time through September. And October.
Do Wednesdays typically work for everybody?
I can't do a Wednesday morning.
Okay.
This one's unusual.
Thursday morning?
Fine with me.
I'm free at 9:30 or after.
Yeah, I could do most Thursdays between now and the end of October. I can't do Thursday, October 24th. Or Thursday, October 10th. But I could do September, if we did like every other week, the 12th, the 26th.
Okay. Why don't we do that? We'll send out an invitation for all of those. And
Yeah.
we'll go from there.
So I would propose the 12th, the 26th, the 3rd, and the 17th.
Perfect.
And then we can find a wrap-up meeting if we need one beyond that. As I know I can't do the 10th and the 24th. I've got all day stuff those days.
12th, 26th, 3rd, 17th at 9:30.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And is there any particular order you want to see everybody in? Or just
No.
whenever we get them here for those meetings? Okay,
I think whatever works for them. Yeah.
perfect.
All right. Anything else?
I don't
All
think
right.
so.
Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Motion from Brent. I'll second. Christine,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Megan.
Oh,
Uh,
can I add one more thing? Sorry.
Nope. Sorry. I think we
before-
already have a motion to adjourn. We already have a majority. No, go ahead.
One thing we didn't talk about that I thought we were going to try and do over the summer was a whole vehicle plan. We're going to kind of get a sense for the whole fleet.
Oh, we can send that to you. We just finished reviewing the fleet study. We can send out a copy of that to everybody.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. With that in mind, I say yes.
All right. Brent,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks.
you, everyone.
Also,
Bye.
yes.
Oh, I didn't get Andrew. Andrew, you're also yes. I apologize. I thought I'd already got you. All right. Bye, everybody.